The first silent sign that you may be closer to a breakthrough than you think is not excitement. It is not confidence. It is that strange moment when the old version of you becomes impossible to return to, even though the new version has not fully arrived yet. You feel it in small ways. The same conversations do not hold you like they used to. The same habits feel heavier. The same fears still speak, but they no longer sound like truth. Something inside you is quietly refusing to live by the old agreement. Carl Jung believed transformation often begins beneath conscious awareness. Before your outer life changes, the unconscious starts loosening your attachment to the identity that kept you safe but limited. That is why this stage can feel confusing. You are not fully free yet, but you are no longer fully trapped. This is one of the most mysterious parts of inner change. You may think nothing is happening because the evidence has not appeared outside, but inside, a separation has already begun. The psyche is pulling you away from the patterns, roles, and fears that cannot come with you into the next chapter. So if you feel like you cannot go back, but you also do not know exactly where you are going, that may not be a failure. It may be the first quiet sign of the breakthrough. You are standing between the person who survived and the person who is finally ready to live. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come only from being busy. You can sleep, take a day off, clear your schedule, and still feel like something inside you is tired. Not your body exactly, but the part of you that has been holding together an identity you are no longer meant to carry. This is one of the quiet signs that a breakthrough may be closer than it looks. Because before life changes visibly, your psyche may begin withdrawing energy from the old patterns. Carl Jung believed that psychological energy does not stay fixed forever. It moves. It leaves what has become lifeless and starts gathering around what is trying to emerge. That is why you may feel tired of explaining yourself, tired of proving your worth, tired of pretending certain things do not hurt, tired of performing motivation for goals that no longer feel alive. From the outside, it may look like you are losing drive, but inwardly, something more important may be happening. Your soul is refusing to keep funding the old life. This kind of exhaustion can feel frightening because it does not always come with clear answers. You may ask yourself, why can't I just keep going like before? But the deeper question may be, why did I believe I had to keep going like that at all? Sometimes fatigue becomes the language your unconscious uses when you have ignored your own truth for too long. Jung would likely see this as a moment of transition, not weakness. The old self requires energy to maintain. The mask requires energy. The pleasing, the hiding, the over-controlling, the constant effort to stay acceptable, all of it takes something from you. And when the psyche is ready to change, it may stop giving energy to what was never truly yours. So if you feel strangely tired before anything has clearly shifted, do not assume nothing is happening. Something may be reorganizing beneath the surface. The exhaustion may not be the end of your movement. It may be the sign that your energy is being called back from the life you are outgrowing. A quiet sign that you are closer to a breakthrough is that old patterns still appear, but they do not control you the same way. The fear shows up, but you question it. The urge to repeat the same mistake comes back, but something in you hesitates. The familiar path is still there, but it no longer feels like home. Carl Jung believed that what remains unconscious tends to shape our behavior from beneath the surface. But once a pattern becomes conscious, it begins to lose some of its authority. You may still feel the old pull, but now you can see it happening. And that small space between impulse and awareness is where change begins. Maybe you used to chase people who gave you mixed signals. Maybe you used to silence yourself to keep peace. Maybe you used to abandon your own needs and call it patience. But now, even when you feel tempted to repeat it, you recognize the cost. This is not instant freedom. It is something more realistic and more powerful: separation. You are no longer completely identified with the wound. You are beginning to observe it instead of becoming it. So when old patterns start feeling weaker, do not dismiss it because the breakthrough has not fully arrived yet. That weakening is part of the breakthrough. It means the unconscious cycle is becoming visible, and what becomes visible can finally be transformed. Right before a breakthrough, you may start seeing parts of yourself you would rather not deal with. Not because you are getting worse, but because the hidden parts of your personality are moving closer to the surface. The resentment you kept minimizing, the fear you covered with control, the insecurity you disguised as independence, the anger you called being realistic. Carl Jung called this hidden material the shadow. It is made of the parts of ourselves we reject, suppress, or refuse to recognize because they do not fit the image we want to maintain. And when you are close to a turning point, the shadow often appears because the next version of your life cannot be built on denial. This can feel uncomfortable because the shadow does not arrive in a polished way. It may show up through reactions that surprise you, emotional triggers that feel stronger than expected, or sudden honesty about what you have been avoiding. You may realize you were not as peaceful as you thought. You were just silent. You were not over it. You were just distracted. You were not detached. You were protecting yourself from wanting too much. But this is not a sign that you are failing your growth. It is often a sign that growth has become real. Jung believed wholeness does not come from pretending to be only light, calm, wise, or healed. It comes from integrating the parts of you that were pushed into the dark so they no longer control you from underneath. That is why shadow work can feel like chaos before it feels like clarity. You may have to admit what hurt you, what you wanted, what you feared, and what you kept repeating without understanding why. And once you admit it, you can stop letting it choose your life in secret. So if uncomfortable truths are rising right now, do not assume you are moving backward. Something in you may be preparing for a breakthrough by refusing to let the hidden parts stay hidden. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to show you what must be seen before you can become whole. One of the most mysterious signs that you may be approaching a major turning point is that life starts feeling less random. Not in a dramatic or magical way, but in a subtle way that is difficult to explain. Certain messages keep appearing. The same themes show up in different conversations. A book finds you at the exact moment you need it. A stranger says something that echoes a question you have been carrying for months. At first, it is easy to dismiss these moments as coincidence, and sometimes they are. But Carl Jung became fascinated by a phenomenon he called synchronicity, which he described as meaningful coincidences that connect inner psychological states with external events. Not because one causes the other, but because both seem connected by a deeper pattern. What makes synchronicity so powerful is not the event itself. It is the feeling that accompanies it. The sense that something is trying to get your attention. The feeling that life keeps highlighting the same lesson until you finally stop and look at it. This often happens when you are near a breakthrough because your awareness is changing. The unconscious is becoming more active in your conscious life. Things you once ignored suddenly stand out. Connections you never noticed before become impossible to miss. You begin seeing patterns where you once saw isolated events. Maybe you keep encountering the same message about letting go. Maybe different people unexpectedly challenge the exact belief that has been limiting you. Maybe opportunities appear that seem unrelated at first, but all point toward the same direction. Jung would argue that these moments matter not because they predict the future, but because they reveal what your psyche is trying to bring into awareness. The mistake many people make is turning synchronicity into superstition. They begin searching for signs everywhere, hoping life will make every decision for them. But Jung's perspective was much deeper than that. The value of synchronicity is not that it tells you what to do. The value is that it helps you notice what is already trying to emerge from within you. When a breakthrough is approaching, your inner and outer worlds often begin speaking the same language. The conversations you hear, the challenges you face, the opportunities that appear, and even the frustrations that repeat themselves may all be circling around a central lesson. And that lesson is usually not about the world. It is about you, about who you are becoming, about what you can no longer ignore, about the truth that has been knocking quietly on the door of your awareness. So if life seems to be repeating certain themes lately, pay attention. Not because every coincidence is destiny, but because patterns often appear before clarity does. And sometimes the breakthrough is not hidden in a single dramatic moment. Sometimes it reveals itself through a series of small signals that, together, form a path you could not see before. One of the quietest signs that you are closer to a breakthrough than you think is that urgency begins to lose its grip on you. Not because your dreams disappeared, not because you stopped caring, but because something inside you no longer wants to build a future from panic. For a long time, urgency can feel like motivation. You rush to prove yourself, to fix everything, to be chosen, to catch up, to make life finally look the way you imagined it should. And because the pressure keeps you moving, you may mistake it for purpose. But eventually, your psyche begins to recognize the difference between being guided and being chased. Carl Jung believed that much of human behavior is driven by unconscious forces, and one of the clearest signs of inner transformation is when you stop obeying those forces automatically. The fear still speaks, but you no longer treat it like a command. The pressure still appears, but you do not organize your whole life around it. Something in you has become more centered. This shift can feel strange because peace may seem unfamiliar at first. If you spent years surviving through tension, calm can almost feel suspicious. You may wonder if you are becoming lazy, detached, or less ambitious. But the truth may be more subtle. You are learning how to move without abandoning yourself. Before a breakthrough, the nervous system often stops craving the same chaos. You may still want growth, love, success, healing, or change, but you no longer want them at the cost of your dignity. You start noticing that the right path does not always demand desperation. Sometimes it asks for patience, honesty, and steadier attention. This is where Jung's idea of individuation becomes important. As you move closer to your deeper self, you become less controlled by external approval and inner compulsion. You stop asking life to validate you immediately. You stop forcing doors just because silence makes you uncomfortable. You begin to trust that what is real does not always need to be rushed. And when urgency fades, clarity has room to speak. You can hear what you actually want, not just what fear told you to chase. You can recognize what feels aligned, not just what feels impressive. You can choose from a quieter place, and that changes everything. So if you are beginning to feel peace where panic used to live, do not dismiss it as emptiness. It may be a powerful sign that your inner world is reorganizing. The breakthrough may be closer than you think, not because everything is speeding up, but because you are no longer letting fear set the pace. I used to think a breakthrough would feel like momentum, like everything suddenly opening, every answer arriving, every doubt disappearing at once. But what actually happened was quieter. I stopped having the same appetite for forcing things that clearly did not want to move. There were moments when I kept pushing because I thought persistence meant pressure. I tried to make certain doors open, certain people understand, certain plans work, even when something in me already knew the energy was wrong. And the more I forced it, the more disconnected I felt from myself. Looking back through Jung's perspective, I can see that the unconscious was trying to redirect me long before I listened. The resistance was not always failure. Sometimes it was information. Sometimes the blocked path was showing me that I was still trying to build a future from an old version of myself. When I finally stopped forcing everything, I did not instantly know what to do next. But I noticed something important. I could hear myself again. The panic got quieter. The need to prove something weakened. And slowly, life started to feel less like a fight and more like a conversation. That was when I understood that being close to a breakthrough does not always mean life becomes easier. Sometimes it means you stop betraying yourself to make the old way work. You stop confusing resistance with rejection, and you begin to notice where your deeper self is actually trying to lead you. I used to wait for the breakthrough to prove itself through something visible, a new opportunity, a new relationship, a sudden answer, some external sign that life was finally moving in my favor. But eventually I realized the first evidence was not outside me. It was in the way I was changing before anything around me changed. I noticed I was responding differently to the same fears. I was no longer giving every doubt the power to stop me. I was no longer chasing what made me feel small just because it looked familiar. The outside world had not fully shifted yet, but the person meeting that world was not the same. Carl Jung's work helped me understand that real transformation often begins in the unconscious before it becomes visible in daily life. The inner life moves first. The identity changes first. The old patterns weaken first. Then, slowly, your choices begin to reflect a different center. And that is what I learned. A breakthrough is not only the moment life opens, it is the moment you stop closing yourself. It is when you stop living from the wound, stop obeying the old fear, and stop abandoning the quiet truth that has been trying to guide you. So if you are in that strange middle place where nothing looks complete but something inside you feels different, do not dismiss it. You may be closer than you think. The breakthrough may already have begun, not as an event, but as a change in who you are becoming.